On the 9th of September 1965, the Battle of Asal-Uttar entered the phase that gave it its most famous image: Pakistani Patton tanks destroyed, disabled, bogged down, or abandoned in the fields around Kemkaran and Asal-Uttar. The phrase "Patton smashed" can sound like a single dramatic instant, but the reality was slower, harsher, and more instructive. By this point, the Pakistani armored thrust had already met mines, flooded ground, concealed Indian tanks, stubborn infantry, and artillery fire. What happened on this day was not magic and not merely luck. It was the progressive collapse of offensive momentum as a powerful armored formation found that every yard forward made movement, supply, coordination, and escape more difficult. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. The battlefield must be understood as a struggle over direction and depth. Pakistan's armored force was pressing from the west and southwest through the Kemkaran sector, trying to open the way toward Beaky Wind and the larger road network beyond. India's defense was arranged around Asal-Uttar, Chima, and nearby positions, forming a defensive box that protected the approaches into deeper Punjab. The distance involved was not enormous on a map, but in battle it became a world of fields, tracks, villages, water, and uncertainty. A few miles could contain every problem that ruins an armored offensive. Tanks could still move, fire, and frighten defenders, but they could no longer move freely enough to make the plan work as intended. For Pakistan, the 9th of September was the day when the need for speed became desperate. The earlier thrust had not broken the Indian defense on the 8th of September, and the longer the battle continued, the more India could strengthen the box. Pakistani commanders still had reasons to press on. A successful breakthrough might yet turn the Kemkaran sector into a deep crisis for India, threatening the roads toward Harakeh and the Bias crossings. But the attack now faced a dangerous contradiction. It needed to move quickly to regain initiative, yet the battlefield demanded caution. Mines, soft ground, hidden anti-tank weapons, and uncertain Indian positions punished haste, while every pause gave the defenders more time to observe, fire, and adjust. The terrain did not destroy the Pattons by itself, but it robbed them of the kind of battle in which they were most useful. Heavy tanks are most dangerous when they can maneuver, concentrate, and exploit gaps in a defender's system. Around Asal-Uttar, the ground broke up that freedom. Sugarcane and other crops shortened visibility. Waterlogged fields made cross-country movement risky. Mines turned likely routes into questions that had to be answered slowly and dangerously. Roads and firmer tracks became attractive because they offered mobility, but they also made movement predictable. Once tanks began bunching, turning, or halting, Indian gunners and artillery observers had the opportunities they needed. The battlefield was becoming a machine for converting movement into exposure. Indian forces used that exposure through combined arms. The infantry of 4th Mountain Division held villages and field positions that prevented Pakistani armor from treating the defensive zone as empty ground. Deccan Horse, with its older Shermans, had already helped interrupt the first momentum of the attack. 3rd Cavalry's Centurions brought heavier armored firepower into the defense, allowing Indian crews to engage Pakistani tanks from better positions and at moments when the attackers were slowed. Engineers had prepared mines and water obstacles, while artillery punished concentration and confusion. No single arm can honestly claim the day alone. The effect came from the way these arms overlapped, each one making the others more dangerous. The engagements of the 9th of September were often local, sudden, and confusing rather than neatly arranged. A Pakistani tank group might probe forward through crops or along a route that appeared passable, only to find itself under fire from a concealed position. A vehicle halted by ground or obstacle could become a target for tank fire, artillery, or an anti-tank weapon. Crews trying to identify the source of fire faced smoke, dust, limited visibility, and the noise of battle. Indian defenders also had incomplete knowledge. They had to judge whether each contact was a probe, a diversion, or the main thrust. The day's fighting was therefore not a clean duel, but a chain of dangerous moments linked by the larger defensive design. Chima and the surrounding village positions remained vital because they kept the armored battle tied to infantry fighting. Pakistani tanks could not simply ignore defended localities without risking their flanks and rear. Yet clearing such positions required infantry support, And infantry moving under artillery, small arms fire, and anti-tank threat could be delayed or separated from the tanks. This was one of the central failures of offensive rhythm. Armor that moved ahead without enough infantry became more vulnerable in close country. Infantry that slowed down to survive could not always protect the tanks at the speed the plan demanded. Indian troops holding village edges, trenches, and field positions made that separation worse, and every separation reduced Pakistani confidence. Command and control also became more difficult as losses and delays accumulated. Radios could carry reports, but reports from a confused armored battlefield are often incomplete, contradictory, or already outdated by the time they are understood. A commander might hear that a route was open, only to learn that tanks had bogged down or come under flank fire. Disabled vehicles could block tracks, recovery teams could be unable to reach them under fire, and fuel and ammunition vehicles had to move through routes that were becoming more dangerous. The attacking formation's strength was not only the number of tanks it possessed at the beginning, it was the number it could keep coordinated, supplied, moving, and tactically useful as the battle wore on. The psychological balance shifted during the day. Before Assault Uttar, the Patton had carried a reputation for modern power, and that reputation mattered to both sides. Pakistani crews had reason to trust their machines, while Indian defenders had reason to respect them. But reputation is fragile under battlefield conditions. When tanks begin burning in fields, when crews hear of mines and hidden guns, when movement slows and expected routes become deadly, confidence drains away. On the Indian side, each successful engagement strengthened the belief that the defensive plan could hold. The sight of enemy armor stopped in front of the box did not remove fear, but it changed fear into something more usable: disciplined resistance.
The cost of the day should not be hidden behind triumphal language. A destroyed tank means men killed, wounded, burned, trapped, or forced to escape under fire. Infantry positions that held against armor did so under shelling, machine gun fire, and the crushing strain of waiting for heavy vehicles to appear through crops and smoke. Civilians in the area saw fields and villages transformed into military obstacles and targets. The later image of wrecked Pattons can make the battle look almost like an exhibition of captured machines, but on 9 September, it was a human disaster unfolding in real time. Serious military history can recognize the tactical achievement without forgetting the fear and suffering inside it.
The phrase "Pattons smashed" became powerful because it captured both material and symbolic defeat. Pakistani tanks were destroyed or captured in significant numbers, though precise totals vary across accounts and should be treated carefully. The important point is not a single exact figure, but the pattern. A force built around armored shock had entered a defensive zone that slowed, exposed, and attrited it. The Patton's reputation made the losses more visible, but the lesson was larger than one tank model. Better-looking equipment could be defeated if it was committed into poor conditions without enough support, reconnaissance, and tempo. Indian preparation did not make Pakistani armor weak, it made Pakistani armor fight the wrong battle. By the end of the 9th of September, Pakistan's offensive had not vanished, but its promise of rapid breakthrough was badly damaged. The road toward the Bayas line was still the objective in theory, yet in practice, it was becoming harder to imagine that road opening. The defended zone had absorbed the blow. The attackers had lost cohesion, and the battlefield itself was now cluttered with the physical evidence of failed movement. Tanks that should have been instruments of exploitation had become obstacles, targets, or stranded machines. The offensive was discovering the cruel truth of Assault Uttar. Pushing deeper into the box did not bring decision closer. It made the way out narrower, and the final failure was now approaching.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.